Welcome to the Animals and Disasters Focus Group. I appreciate you being here. We're going to do a few things today, and hopefully we will kick off a whole brand new project. So as people join us, we'll have Marcia let them in, but we'll go ahead and get started now. My name is Cindy Stewart. I'm the operations manager for Cadre. With me is Marcia Hovey. She is the executive director for Cadre. We will be your instructors for today, or your facilitators, if you will. Is my volume okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If you would please put your name and the agency that you represent in the chat, that would be helpful to us. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Marcia will be our access coordinator. So if you need, if you have access and functional needs for this presentation, if you need a reader or if you need those kind of things, please do check with Marcia, and she can help you with that. Some basic Zoom etiquette. We would like, if you are speaking, for you to turn your video on so that we can see you. There may be some people on the call who need to read lips, and it would be more helpful to all of us if we could see your face if you are speaking. Otherwise, if you would leave yourselves on mute, that would be helpful as well. I'm going to start us off by doing a Zoom poll just to find out who we are and who we represent. So Marcia's going to go ahead and start our first poll. And I don't even know if I will be able to see it, Marcia.
Yeah, I don't know that you can. Can people see a poll up on your screen? Okay, with 3 questions, so you can just click them. This looks like the end question, Cindy. I wonder if
You're doing the introduction. You're not doing the introduction.
I don't think. Let's fix this, everyone. Hold on. Let me go back. Introduction poll. Here we go. Six questions. Who do you represent? Which you just put in the chat as well. A nonprofit animal related agency, a local government, an interested individual or other. So if you're a for-profit business, we're glad you're here too. So don't just be other for right now.
Yes.
What type of pets do you primarily serve? Is your agency 24/7 provider? And then the number of animals that you serve at one time. Good. I'm seeing answers coming in now. How do you use volunteers? Or do you use volunteers? And do you have an emergency plan? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many? 80% so far. Are those that haven't replied to the poll yet unable to do it, or should I wait a minute? And we're a small group. You can be off mute as long as it's quiet in your background.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm going to apologize in advance for 2 things. I can't guarantee that it will be quiet in my background. I'm working from home today, and I'm having my bathroom remodeled, and both my little dogs are sequestered in my office with me. But if banging starts happening, barking will probably start happening too. So my apologies in advance if that's the case. And my second apology is I'm just coming off of a cold, so I sound a little squeaky, and I apologize for that as well.
Okay, so everyone answered the poll. Thank you. And so you should be able to see the answers on your screen now. So we've got 1 nonprofit, 2 local government, 2 other, and then dogs, 3 serve dogs, 2 serve cats, 1 serves large animal, and 3 serve other animals as well. And then 1 is 24-hour. 1 is sometimes 24-hour, and 3 are not. And then all of them serve over 21 animals. And 4 out of 5 use volunteers, and 3 have an emergency plan, and 2 are not sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that information. I do appreciate hearing from you and knowing who we've got in the room. This is a little disorienting for me because for some reason, the perspective that I have, I can't see the polls. So Marcia's going to have to just kind of tell me what the polls say. So I apologize for that.
It's just a weird, it's a weird glitch in Zoom for the person that's presenting. They can't see.
I can't see anything
So
except
it's fine.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to start us off by talking about what CADRE is. First of all, CADRE stands for Collaborating Agencies in Disaster Relief Efforts. And CADRE has been in existence since the Loma Prieta earthquake, really, in some form or fashion. We were, well, I'll go through the pieces. We are a non-governmental, nonprofit that serves the community in emergency management matters, the community-based organizations, other nonprofits, faith-based organizations, private sector, the feed stores, those kind of folks as well. So we serve those people to help with emergency planning when there's not a disaster, and to help with emergency coordination when there is a disaster and we're in that kind of coming out of response and into recovery phase. So we can coordinate resources. We are the liaison to the local government, to the county. And so if there are resources that they need or that others need, they may contact us looking for resources, or we may be able to contact them asking for resources as well. We get our information directly from the horse's mouth. So that was stupid. Sorry. So we don't, we go directly to the Emergency Operations Center for information, and we share that information with our network. So people that are involved with our network, which it's free to be a part of our membership network, get direct information from us in a disaster, things that are happening, where the shelters might be, what kind of actions the government's taking, all of those kind of things we will share with our network when the disaster happens. We were designated recently by the County Board of Supervisors to be the VOAD for Santa Clara County, which is a national organization. The VOAD means Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. So we are the designated coordinator of the nonprofits for Santa Clara County. So even though we are not a governmental agency, we are designated as the coordinator on behalf of a governmental agency. Our funding comes from government and foundation grant funding, in and including this session this session is being paid for with Homeland Security grant funding. We also receive some foundation funding and just regular donations. We're a very small group. We really kind of came together as a few retired emergency managers. I was an emergency manager working for the county, retired 5 years ago. Marcia worked for the end result was Marcia worked for the city of Cupertino. She's worked for
Cupertino, Los Altos Hills, Sunnyvale,
uh,
West Valley Mission College. So yeah, I was, my official job was City of Cupertino. When I retired, I continued to serve other organizations in the county.
And then we have a third instructor that is part of our team who is a retired emergency manager from City of Mountain View. So we, between the three of us, have about 100 years of experience in emergency management.
That's really sad.
That makes me sound really old. The services that we provide on Blue Sky Days are training, where we can help with plans or review plans, that sort of thing. And then anything that's in the arena of emergency management support. So we, during the rains, the heavy rains that we had recently, we supported the county and provided information on things that were happening in our purview. And then we also received information and shared that out to our network. Where we can, we help the nonprofits and the non-governmental agencies coordinate their emergency support. So, the Cadre Network includes all of Santa Clara County's non-governmental, community-based, faith-based, private sector entities and agencies that are interested in emergency management. So, and I think, I mean, it may be presumptuous of me, but I think everyone is interested at some level in emergency management. I don't think any of us wants to go into the next earthquake with our eyes completely closed and absolutely no plan. So that's who Cadre is. Our goals and our focus for today are, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the animal plans that are currently in existence that we are aware of. We may not be aware of everything that there is out there right now. We're gonna talk a little bit about some of the gaps and the challenges as they pertain to those plans. And then we're going to discuss some support ideas and try and figure out, or at least get us started down the path of trying to figure out what to do next. Our hope and our goal is to create a communications network amongst you and other agencies and entities like you, as it pertains to dealing with animals during a disaster, whether they be small animals or large. How do we communicate? What's the nexus? What is the connection for us to be able to communicate information, resource needs, and resources available? So those are that's one of our goals. And ultimately, Cadre has what we call function teams. We have a food function team. We have a case management function team. We have a shelter function team. So those are led by some of our lead agencies in our network. For example, Second Harvest Food Bank leads the food function, and Catholic Charities leads the case management function. Goodwill and Salvation Army lead the donations function. Where our hope is to create an animal function in Cadre so that we can then be able to do some of the same things that we do with those other function teams as it pertains to animals before, during, and after a disaster. So why should we plan for animals anyway? I mean, That question has been asked of me, and I find it kind of interesting. But you know, the real truth is they can't plan for themselves. People won't evacuate without their animals. We saw that in Katrina, and we've seen it in every disaster since. And since Katrina, it's become the law. In 2006, the federal government, the Congress voted in the
Cindy, I don't know if it's me or you, but the sound just cut out. Was it, can everybody else hear her? No, okay,
You can't hear me?
now we can.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Now the little black bar came on the screen again.
Yeah, the little black bar that just came on the screen says my network is unstable. Great.
Okay, well, maybe you need to go off camera for a minute.
That's what happens when we, let me see if I can go off camera here. Okay, let's see if that helps. So what I was saying was that that the Pets Act says that local emergency preparedness plans should include at all levels household pets. And what they're considering household pets is primarily cats and dogs, but that's what's written into the plan, and service animals. We want to plan for more than just cats and dogs. We want to also plan for large animals. And we have done some planning for large animals, as a couple of you can attest to in the past, who have come along on the path with me. So, and that's at all levels of disaster. That's for the disaster during, before, during, and after the disaster.
And if I could just jump in for a second, I don't know that Cindy fully introduced herself. She did say she worked for the county, but she wrote the Santa Clara County Animal Plan in 2005. In 2005.
Plan, yeah.
And
I'm going to talk about that, Marcia, when I get down.
okay, so and the two of us, you know, this is when I look at the people that came to this call, and obviously we thank you for even trusting. It's like, who the heck are these people and why do they want to talk to us? Because that's not ever happened before. And so we're just grateful that you're here as the first people to give feedback on whether or not we need some more planning. We do know that it's government's responsibility to do sheltering, including for animals. But the reality is they're not the experts in that. Some of the folks on this call, I'm just smiling. I see that there's a bird rescue and Dogtopia, who my daughter used to take her dogs to Dogtopia, and I'm so glad that you came to this call. But we wanted to open the dialogue and start having the conversation, because there are a couple hundred organizations in Santa Clara County that work with animals on a daily basis, and we want to capture that expertise and see if we can all help each other.
Yes. Thank you, Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
In a disaster, our pets are affected by the same things that the people are affected by. In a fire, our pets are going to be affected by by smoke inhalation. In a fire, our pets don't wear shoes, and so they may be injured where people are not even injured. By the way, this little cat survived and is doing very well, and a friend of mine has it on probably at the bottom of their bed as we speak. It's also important for reunification, which I think is probably one of the most important things in a disaster, is making sure that we take care of those pets, but making sure also that we can get them back to their original owners. I was involved with one of the large fires a few years ago, I was sent up to assist, and reunification was such a huge issue. And we're going to talk about helping you to make reunification a little bit easier. If there's some pre-planning done, it could be a much more simple process than it was in my experience at Lake County. So what do we have currently in place? Now, I'm going to tell you in advance that these things are things that have been established, and I've been retired for 5 years, so I'm not positive where they actually are in the process right now. But they have been. In 2005, we did write an operational area wide emergency plan for animals, an animals in disasters operational area wide plan. Now, the reason I say operational area wide plan is because that includes the county and all of the cities within the county. So it's not just the county unincorporated plan, it's a plan that includes all of the cities in, and we brought together all of the animal care agencies, the Humane Society, and other governmental agencies, and wrote this plan. Who was not at the table? Well, we're going to talk about that when we get to the gaps in the next slide. But the plan's been written. It's my understanding that it was recently given to the county animal care agency, which it's also my understanding that they serve Gilroy, Morgan Hill, and unincorporated South County. So there's a little bit of an issue there that the plan is an operational area plan, but it's been given to an agency that doesn't serve the whole operational area. So we're going to work with them on that part. I want to say it was about 2008 or 9, Pete Kutras, who happened to be the county executive at the time, gave me about $100,000 to help with this project of trying to prepare for animals in a disaster. After Katrina, many of us were very concerned that animals were not being considered, and that we needed to do this. And once I had already started the process before the Pets Act came down, but in order to continue that, we needed some funding to purchase some equipment. So Pete Kutras gave me $100,000 to create 4 trailers. We have 4 covered trailers. I don't even remember. I think they're 25 feet long. They are equipped with cages. They've got generators. They have radio communications. They have all the forms. The intention of those trailers is to use them to stand up a temporary animal shelter next to a human shelter, or in any situation where a temporary animal shelter might be needed, to support at least 30 animals for at least 30 days. So that was what they were originally established for. The trailers have 100 crates in them. They have directional lighting on the top of them, to just like a police car does, so that you can direct people to where the shelter might be. They have pop-up tents, they have tables, they have the ability to establish a little bit of an examining room, if you will. They've got chairs, they've got, of course, they've got leashes and bowls and everything but water and food. They have lighting, emergency lighting, all of the things that you would need to stand up a temporary animal shelter. Those trailers are strategically located around the county. There's one in East County Yard, one in South County Yard, one in West County Yard, and one in City of Sunnyvale, I believe. They are being maintained by the county's fleet and facilities. So they just had all their tires replaced and all of those kind of things. However, they are not being used in any way because the people that are responsible for them were given them without any instruction on how to use them or what their purpose was. So that's a disconnect that I have found recently that I will try and help with, since I was the one that originally got the grant funding and originally purchased the trailers and had the plan written. In about, what do you say, Jane, maybe, or William, 2008, maybe, the Cal Fire chief in South County came to me and said, Cindy, we need to consider the large animals. Can you help us? And I said yes. And Jane, do you have your hand up? Somebody's got their hand up.
No, this is Cher from the city
Oh,
of San Jose.
yes, sure. Go ahead.
Sorry if I missed this, but can you tell me again how many trailers you have, and are they,
The
I guess, more specifically for county use, for
No.
county to use at their discretion, or I'm unclear on that.
No, there are 4 trailers and they were purchased. The initial purchase was with county funds. However, since then, in order, that did not fill the trailers. Since then, there have been approximately $300,000 worth of equipment put in those trailers, and more than just in the trailers. At one time, UASI, which is a grant, a Bay Area wide grant, gave me $250,000 to do a project that whereby we created kits for people who were coming out of a shelter to take either to their home or to their new location or to their the place that they were going to live once they left the shelter, rolling backpacks with everything that they would need to take with them except food and water for their pets. So a temporary crate, a portable crate, food bowls, leashes, flashlights, sorry, all of the things that we thought as a group people would need if they were leaving a shelter and not able to go back to their homes to take care of their pets, pet beds, all of those kind of things. So there's a whole plethora of supplies and equipment over and above the 4 trailers that the county has.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Sure. In 2008, we established the large animal evacuation teams. And I got some more grant funding to purchase a Connex box to put at the Horsemen's Association to use to fill with things that they might need for large animal evacuation teams.
Cindy, this is Dusty from Santa Clara County,
Yes.
LAE. The
Yes.
Connex box no longer exists at the Horsemen's Association.
Oh, really?
All those resources have been moved to the brand new animal control facility
Oh,
down
really?
in San Martin, because I don't know if you've been down there, but it's a beautiful new facility. So we no
Okay.
longer use Santa Clara County Horsemen's Association.
Okay, well, as I said, I've been out of the loop for about 5 years, so
Yeah.
thank you for giving me that updated information. You know, when I talked to animal control a few days ago, she told me she didn't know where the Connex box was. And she didn't know that there was a Connex box.
No, that was before. I can give you like a 2-second history of what's happened since you were in control.
Go ahead.
Okay, basically, Dana Reed made us a lot more formal than we were back in your days, meaning we're all FEMA certified and we're all second responders. We all have our emergency relief cards. So we only get called out by animal control, and then we go on Santa Clara County's workman's comp plan. So we're very formal in what we do and what we can't do. And so there's a small group of us of about 12 people. We all have horse trailers, we all have trucks. And we are, I'm sure you know Stephanie Riley, but she is our supervisor.
Okay. Oh, good.
Okay, so you are volunteer disaster service workers sworn in by Santa Clara County so that
That's,
you
that's correct.
liability protections. Okay, that's good.
That's correct. So
Better for you.
that also means we know we can go behind fire lines as CAL FIRE requests and still be insured and everything.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. There is a list of resources in the Emergency Operations Center for the county. It's about 6,000 lines long. It has everything from temporary pens to specific animal resources that we may be able to call on. It's at the county Emergency Operations Center because in a disaster, the county has the authority to sequester supplies if they need to. So, and the county is responsible for prioritizing those supplies and resources across the county. So there is that list, and a member of the county's animal control agency or one of the city animal care agencies would be sitting in that emergency operations center with access to all of those resources. So if there were resource needs across the county, we could call into the emergency operations center and they could help us get some of those resources if that was the case. Some of the cities also have plans in place, and I'm not sure right now exactly what the status is of those plans or who's got plans. I used to know 5 years ago, but I'm just stepping back into this arena. And so I am working now from a nonprofit perspective and the non-government perspective and trying to get back in and figure out what there is out there. So some of my information, as pointed out by Dusty, might not be the most up to date, but I do know that some of the cities do have emergency plans. Animal services agencies also have some plans. City of San Jose Animal Care, the last I heard, they created, when I created the 4 trailers for the operational area, San Jose created 2 trailers. And I think after that, they actually created a 3rd trailer. The Humane Society created a couple of trailers, mirroring them off of the idea, the trailers that we had designed for the operational area. So there are somewhere between, I don't know, 6 to 8 to 10 trailers out there that are available with equipment, with crates, with all the kind of supplies that are needed for a disaster. And when I was working for county, we actually used some of the crates. There was a temporary shelter established for the homeless during one of the extremely cold weather events in city of Sunnyvale, and some of the people wouldn't come into the shelter because they had animals and there was no way to deal with the animals. And so I had to make a phone call to the state to get the National Guard to give us permission to allow the animals. The shelter was established at the National Guard facility in Sunnyvale to give us permission to allow animals to be in one of the rooms in the National Guard building. And we brought crates in so that those animals would be safe and could, the people could be safe as well. And we brought crates in for those animals so that the homeless could come in from the cold. So those are ways that we can use those. It doesn't necessarily need to be a catastrophic disaster where everyone is in upheaval. It could be something as small as just needing a few crates for a temporary shelter. But there are gaps in those plans, and one of the biggest gaps in those plans, in my humble opinion, is the fact that we did not include the whole community, that you all were not called for helping to help create these plans. I know that the large animal people were intimately involved in the creation of the large animal evac teams. And the large animal evac teams have made the commitment, and correct me if I'm wrong, William or Dusty, one of you, if this is no longer true, but they have made the commitment that if they were to go into a property that had large animals to be evacuated, and they found a dog or a cat or a small animal that they could evacuate at the same time, they would. And they would have the equipment from the county animal care agency to be able to have crates or whatever they might need to be able to evacuate those small animals as well. Does that still hold
That
true?
that is affirmative. Typically now, we will actually follow a animal control vehicle onto a property. And so they will have their, whatever they have on board the truck specifically for small animals. And then we can maintain and take out any large animals as necessary.
That's good. Okay, great. So one of the challenges that we recognize is that evacuees want their pets. They don't want to just evacuate with their pets. They want them really close to them. That Lake County fire that I was deployed to, I worked with the Animal Control Agency in Lake County, and one of the things that happened was the people were evacuated. Many people were evacuated to Petaluma, and to, in that area, there were Red Cross shelters established for those people who evacuated. Well, the fire was so fast that they didn't have time to get anything. They got in their vehicles and evacuated. And then they were sitting in a shelter in Petaluma or Santa Rosa, and their pets were still in Lake County on their property, and they called animal control to find out if someone could go out and make sure that their pet was okay and feed them and take care of them. And those people made calls every single day. They didn't have anything else to do. They're sitting in a shelter. They got their cell phone. They would make 5, 6, 7 calls a day. And it really congested the whole process, because on their end, and I hate to tell the story out of school, but on their end, they didn't have a way to coordinate that information. So we would send animal evacuation people out to those residences every day, and there wouldn't be any animals. And the next day there'd be another call, and we'd have another ticket that said, go out to that same property and see if there's an animal, because the person had still called and the loop had never been closed. The people never got called back. We never completed the communication. So even as something as small as being able to have a communication plan, a way to tell those people who had been evacuated, they didn't know if their house had burned to the ground, they didn't know if their animals were okay, to help them understand what was going on would have been a really good idea. Unfortunately, they had not done the pre-planning for that. And by the way, neither have we. So, that's one of the things that we really need to involve, to coordinate in this group, is that ability to get that communication going. We all know animal shelters are already full. On a daily basis, animal shelters are 90 8% full already. So if you add a disaster to that and a lot of pets that have not been needing sheltering, they're not going to be able to be sheltered at those animal shelters. They don't have the staff, they don't have the space. So that's another gap that we see that needs to be resolved. The government is very good at some things, but caring for animals during a disaster is not one of them. We did a class a few years ago with UC Davis, who came out and taught the Cal firefighters how to manage horses in a fire. And many of them had never handled horses in any way. They had no idea what to do with them. That's not their priority. Their priority is to protect that property and keep the fire away from it, not to handle the animals during that disaster. So there isn't the bandwidth or the expertise. You all are the experts when it comes to handling animals that are stressed or that can't, that are out of control, or that have, that are confused and don't have their owners with them. You're the people that have that expertise, not the government. Community organizations like yourselves and the volunteers that you may bring with you need to come to the table and help us plan this and help us figure out how to operationalize the plan that's already in place, or whatever it takes, whatever it means, and get, move this ball down the road a little bit. I have another poll. It's the needs and resources poll, Marcia. If you would launch that poll for us, it just has a couple of questions in it. One of them, what would you need? And one of them, what could you help? If you were not affected. So if you would read that poll, if you would launch it and let people answer those questions, I'd appreciate it.
All right, it's been launched. And I think this is the two sides of the coin. It's like, we want you to be able to continue to do whatever it is you're doing. And so if you think you couldn't, maybe because your facility got damaged or something, or you had a larger number of animals, what would you need? How could we support that? And then if you weren't damaged, is there something that you would want to do to help? Okay, we've got, and I think Sherry Lynn stepped away. So this is probably no, we've got a couple more now. 8 total, so we should get 7 responses. Is there anybody that's not able to see the poll or not able to answer the questions?
Since I can't see the poll, can you tell me what the results are?
Right now, we have 5 out of 8 that for what would you need? 1 would need information, 1 would need supplies, 2 would need facilities to house animals. 1 would need volunteers, 1 would need other. So let's find out what the other is. And then for how could you help? 2 said yes, 1 said no, 4 said maybe. And it's a good answer, because it really, it depends on the circumstance that there are needs. You can say, oh, we could help with that, or no, we can't. Access to medical support. Yeah, Peter, absolutely. And I'm hoping that some of you maybe can introduce us to some veterinarians that might have an interest in being part of this discussion. Yeah.
In February, Stephanie and I were at a seminar up at UC Davis, and they are trying to organize essentially veterinary strike teams in case of disasters.
Yes,
This
nice.
is a statewide effort. We had quite a few, organizations like LAE from all of them. I think there's 14 different counties represented. So
That's great.
slowly but surely, those procedures are being put in place. So vets can be called out via UC Davis on an organized way, so we know it's actually what's going on and who's being deployed.
That's good. We would need to make sure that we were getting our local vets into that system, or because I think that the purpose of that group is assuming that the local vets can't help because they were so impacted. But the more you have your local resources coordinated so that you know who can help and who can't, we know who to help and who doesn't need help, that gives us a much quicker access to resources. And I wouldn't, two reasons I wouldn't want somebody traveling into Santa Clara County if there were hazards on the way, and I wouldn't want the animals to have to wait that long. But that's good. I mean, you need to have a statewide system, but we also need to have our local system.
Sarah,
Just to keep those relationships going.
Sarah, I want to acknowledge the fact that it is hard to just pick one. And that's why the question specifically says, what would be your number one? I know you're going to need all those things, but what would be the first thing that you would need? So that I just wanted to acknowledge that indeed that is a difficult question. And
Let me share so you can see the answers. 4 would need a facility to house animals. So that's the beauty of these kind of discussions. It's like, if we create a list of who has the ability to house animals, then in a disaster, we can say, hey, we need a place to house animals. And then people can say, nope, or yep, bring them here.
I can do 2, or I can do, we've done some of that planning, especially on a large animal scale. Maybe William Brooks can share with us a little bit about, we've got different ranches that are available that could house large animals, and some of them have actually said they've got the space, if we could bring crates there, to bring small animals as well, and someone to care for them. So, where do we put those animals that might need to be cared for, and who takes care of them? Those are some of the things that we hope to be able to resolve with a group like this, creating that whole community, so that, we know as emergency managers, when the disaster hits, we don't have enough resources. We have to turn to a community, and it's going to be a community effort for us to survive a disaster. We're going to have that grassroots effort from the community that assists where you can, and where with what you can assists each other. A few years ago, we did a project where we brought senior facilities together. And in a similar kind of way, we had the directors of several senior homes come together, and they coordinated how they might be able to, if a disaster happened, for example, in South County, the senior facility in South County might be able to move some of their residents to another location. So and so would take 2 people, and so would take another 2 people, and they did a complete coordinated effort amongst themselves, because they recognize that government isn't going to be completely overwhelmed in a disaster like that, dealing with the responding to a disaster, and not necessarily the needs of the community individuals but trying to do the most for the greatest number of people. And so some of the smaller needs fall through the cracks in that situation. And if organizations can coordinate those efforts amongst themselves, they can accomplish what can't be accomplished by government. And government can support those efforts and would encourage those kind of efforts if the planning was in place in advance and they didn't need to be called on. So if you don't need to call 911 because you already got it covered, that's going to be good, not just for you, but for all of us, right?
And farther down the road, but if we do identify organizations that are interested in maybe expanding their capability for disaster, maybe putting a generator on their building or things like that, we could help write grants to get those, to justify it as part of the formal disaster response planning. So, but that's down the road, and we need a lot more people on the call than this. But this is the start, and this recording will be shared with those that aren't here today. And we don't expect everyone to want to play in the sandbox, and that's okay. But I know there are 1 million people in this county that love animals. And if we can develop a plan that makes individuals feel that their pets are going to, get great treatment while they're in their shelter, that's going to reduce the impact, reduce the stress, make sure the dogs and cats and iguanas or whatever it is are getting all the love they need. And, we'll come out of it better as a community. And so we thought we should at least start that dialogue, because that's what we do, is coordinate and collaborate. So we felt like we didn't have you in the loop yet, and we needed to do that.
William, I see that you wrote a message about churches. Would you just come off speaker and speak to that issue?
He was having trouble with his
With this mic.
speaker, so he may not be able to. He
Okay.
may just be listening. So it says churches generally aren't built to house animals, but we have hundreds of members in our congregations who may be willing to provide small animal housing and care for short periods. Would it make sense to do a poll among our congregations to see if there are people who could offer services for 1 or 2 at a time? I think that's a possibility. We're going to wait till we get a little farther down the road before we do that, to talk about, the liability of the person taking the dog, and, what kind of protections we need, dogs or cats or whatever the animals are. How do we protect them to make, what was that?
I love that you're already starting to deep dive, though. That
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
That you're already starting to think up solutions, and how do we get through how do we resolve some of these issues? I think that those are certainly potentials for us for future conversations.
Mm-hmm. And I captured that comment so we don't lose it.
Okay, so as it pertains to temporary emergency housing, let's just talk a little bit about what are those minimum requirements. We did a few years ago, we brought the ASPCA here, their disaster planning team's emergency shelter team, and they spent 3 or 4 days with us, teaching us how to stand up a temporary emergency animal shelter and what kind of requirements and needs there are for that. The picture that you see on the screen right there is actually Marcia. She was involved in that class.
Oh, my hair was different.
And she has hair different, yes. But we talked about, other places where, other locations where we wouldn't even consider, we wouldn't even think about a place like that to maybe house a few animals in a disaster. Marcia, do you want to tell the story of Home Depot fire and the Wagleys next door?
Yeah, so I live down the street from the Home Depot in San Jose that caught fire a year or so ago. And next door to it, and it was an impressive fire. You could see it from outer space. But right next door to it was a doggy daycare, Wagley. And they adapt.
The call.
What?
I said, we were hoping to have them on this call.
Yeah, but they had to get their animals out because they didn't know if the fire was going to spread, and so they, started bringing them out 3 or 4 at a time. And I didn't hear the complete story, except that I know that some people just stopped and helped them, grabbed leashes and helped them get them out. And there's a golf land is across the street, and they took some of them over there. And it was just a very resourceful thing. I don't know if it was a plan, though. I'm not sure it was a plan, and I'm glad everything worked out, because that would have been horrible.
But if it was a plan, it's probably not a bad plan.
No.
There are lots
No,
of suitable locations that a person doesn't even think about. I know in city of Cupertino, the community center there is where Cupertino has established their emergency shelter. But that center isn't going to allow the animals to be inside the center. So there's a tennis court close by on the property, and they're going to stand up an emergency animal shelter on that tennis court. The tennis players probably won't be thrilled with that, but it's a disaster. So there are lots of places, lots of suitable sites like that. I know you all can come up with probably a half a dozen of them yourselves. So those are some of the things that we're hoping to be able to bring as we have conversations about this, and we start creating those resources, and being able to figure out those answers to some of those kind of questions, to the questions of what is the screening process. When we wrote the Animals in Disasters plan, which unfortunately, Dusty, Stephanie Riley from Animal Care, who is County Animal Care, who is responsible for that plan now, doesn't even know that there is a whole series of forms that go along with that plan. All of the animal care agencies came together, and we created a whole series of forms that would be needed: an intake form, an ID form, a release form to have your animal treated that says you'll be responsible for a certain amount, and you write in the amount of medical care. All these different things that I personally hadn't even thought of, but the animal care agencies thought of. And I'm sure that there are some things missing from those as well, that you all could be able to help us review those forms and figure out what else might need to be on those forms.
yeah, there could easily, had we reached out to the community first, there might have already been registration processes at kennels or doggy daycares that would have been sufficient for us, but
I'm sure, and liability forms and all of those kind of things. So the forms that, and I personally put these forms together on behalf of this group with the help of this group, but I did the actual making the form part. The forms are all written so that they can fit into Chameleon, which is the software that the animal care agencies use for day-to-day tracking of animals. So that's what they're written for, but do they actually meet the needs of kennels, of rescues of other agencies that don't necessarily use chameleon. So, going over those forms is another thing that we're hoping to be able to do in the near future, and, trying to help figure out what are those locations, and in advance figuring out who's responsible for that community room at the park in Sunnyvale at Murphy Park. How do we get keys? Can we bring animals into that building? Can the people use the restroom there while they're standing up a temporary animal shelter? Can we get things that we might need to assist a team if they were working on helping animals? So those are all questions still up in the air, and some of this has been discussed, and some of this needs to be discussed with new people and rediscussed with some of the ones that have already come to the table. And then of course there's always, once we figure out where to put them, what facility, where we might be able to put them, how do we meet their needs medically? How do we have climate control? We had a large heat event happening a few years ago, and one of the mobile home parks in Sunnyvale had a transformer that popped. One of the transformers popped, and the whole mobile home park was without power in the middle of a heat event. And we're talking about 250 mobile homes, many of them with seniors in them, most of them with seniors that had small pets, small dogs and cats. And so it wasn't just evacuating those people, but figuring out what to do with all of those animals and getting them to someplace that was air conditioned, and that would keep them from having medical issues that required more assistance. Once we get them all to us to some kind of a location, then how do we care for them? How do we feed them? How do we make sure that we have sanitation procedures in place that, make sure everyone's safe, that we've got emergency procedures, that we've got reunification procedures? What do we do if they come in injured? What do we do if they show up with a snake? How do we deal with if they show up with birds? The Loma fire brought to my attention the fact that they're up in the Santa Cruz Mountains on Santa Clara County's side. There are a couple of exotic ranches. There is a ranch that has camels. And you might laugh, but they use the camels during the Christmas holidays to replicate live nativity scenes. And they have animals that are specifically for that. There is also an aviary who breeds birds up there. And she has property up one of the roads in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And she's got this huge, beautiful property with a bunch of outdoor pens for all of the birds that she raises. And, fortunately, she has a plan, and she has little crates to put all of those birds into, and people to help her get them off the mountain. And so she was prepared. She was personally prepared. But what if she hadn't been, and she had thousands and thousands of dollars worth of very expensive birds that she needed to take care of. So, those kind of things we need to take those kind of things into consideration as we plan for animals and as we explore some of those possibilities. So what needs to be in place for us to be able to support disasters? One of the things, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, is that thought that each individual person, because really the bottom line is the first line of defense for a person's animals is them. So is the animal owner. So I'm responsible for the two little dogs that are sitting in the beds next to me right now, being very quiet, and I'm really appreciative. And you're responsible for the ones that you own also. Past that, the ones that you care for in a daycare situation, in a kennel situation, in a rescue situation, they're, you're the next line of defense for them. So talking a little bit about helping you as an organization be prepared and be resilient and be able to, like the bird lady did, have a plan that you can evacuate your animals and you have a place to take them to, and you have people to help you with that, and you have crates right there, you don't have to wait for them. All of those kind of preparedness elements are crucial to the ability to get this overall plan off the ground. There is potential, Marcia kind of touched on it a little bit, for us to help with grant applications that might be able to get things like generators or crates that you might need, or those kind of things in place that you might need in a disaster. Some of that may come from the fact that you may already be tied in foundational wise or funding wise, grant wise, to other county programs, to the animal care program, or to some other county programs. So you might be able to get some funding along those lines to help, or we may be able to help you. I was curious to find out if any of you are receiving any kind of local assistance, government grant type assistance. So I would ask Marcia to put the funding poll up, and maybe we can see what the results of that are.
Okay, I just launched it. The question is, does your agency receive financial or other assistance from local government? Okay, 6 said no and 1 said not sure.
That's all good information,
Yep.
knowing that that's the case, and that, that would certainly give us other directions that we would want it to look at.
So for those, I'm just curious, are you funded by individual donations? Oh, here we are. Get a grant from SF Shelter. Proportional to how many birds you take in. Okay,
It's interesting.
interesting. This is good to know. Or is it individual donations, or is it like foundations that support animals?
Are you
Or
feeding?
are you just for profit and you're doing great?
We rely pretty much entirely on public donations. The grant that we get is from, I think it's Friends of SFACC. So they're a nonprofit who also reward the other rescues that help San Francisco Shelter deal with animals that they're not prepared to deal with themselves.
I probably should have asked the question of, do you know of places to get that kind of funding? Because if there is, for example, I know that Santa Clara County has a program for animals, and I'm not sure what all of the ins and outs are of becoming a member of that, or getting any funding from that funding source. But if it's something that requires you to have an emergency plan, maybe we can help you get an emergency plan. If it's that you need some more exposure, maybe we can help with that. There are ways for us to be able to help you get grants, or get or reap some of the benefits of grants. I may be able, on behalf of Cadre to write a Homeland Security grant that for this group that says, I would like to get emergency radios for all of the members of this group. And then we give each of you an emergency radio. Those kind of things are certainly possible. And we, as we explore some of this planning and create this this function team, hope to be able to bring those kind of resources to bear for you as well. So who, who should be at the table? I mean, I think we still do need our animal care agencies to participate. We need our Horsemen's Association, our ranchers, some of the new people at the table, groomers, maybe pet supply, maybe our veterinarians. I have had multiple conversations with CVMA and have done presentations with them. I know that they are doing emergency planning as well. Maybe we need to talk with them and, kind of coordinate some information sharing in advance of a disaster with them. Foster care facilities. I know there's a cat facility down in Morgan Hill that has somewhere of 50 cats. She is a private cat rescue, not affiliated with anyone. And, she adopts cats out, or she brings cats in and cares for them and pays for the whole thing with her own retirement funding. Those kind of people probably could use some help in a disaster. If we knew who they were, maybe we could, bring some things together to help people like that. Fish and game certainly should be at the table, though there is a whole different animal with, I keep using those references by accident. There is a whole different consideration when it comes to wildlife and how do we handle wildlife and what are the restrictions and the responsibilities around that. The rescue organizations, the kennels, the breeders, bringing all of those groups together. Any ones that I have not thought of that you might, that you think we might need to consider, write them in the chat if you would. That would be most helpful.
I think we missed doggy daycare
Doggy daycares.
and kennel. I mean, we talked about them at the beginning, but
Yeah, we talked, well, the larger ones like PetSmart and Petco, who have, the pet, I think it's a PetSmart at Marketplace downtown, has doggy daycare at their facility. And a few years ago, one of the county executives asked me to speak with them about the potential, because they're close to the county's emergency operations center, about the potential for them to assist the EOC with if someone was coming to work in the operations center, but they had pets that they needed to care for, could they bring their pets with them? And would PetSmart daycare be able to help take care of those pets while that person was working in the emergency operations center? Great plan, great idea. Unfortunately, PetSmart is a corporate organization, and I never could make the connection with them to actually get permission to write that into any kind of a plan. We wanted to be able to write that into a plan and have some kind of a mutual aid agreement with them in advance, but we never could get that to happen because they're a corporation. So, the thought always was, well, county government, if need be, could sequester them to and ask them to help in that way without a plan, but we don't want to do it that way if we don't have to. If we can plan, the other option would be, which was the option that we chose to go with, which was to bring one of those animal trailers that I talked about to the Emergency Operations Center is at the sheriff's office on the 4th floor of the sheriff's office, to the parking lot, the back parking lot at the sheriff's office, and to stand up a temporary animal shelter right there on site. So, you know, some of the doggy daycares are individuals and some of them are corporate owned. And the corporate ones are the ones that we have more difficulty bringing to the table because they already have their commitments at a corporate level with the state or the federal governments. So, yeah, I don't see CERT considered. And I think you're absolutely right, William, we should be considering CERT. CERT is a community emergency response teams. Those are people who have been trained by local government and emergency managers and to handle emergencies in their neighborhoods, and to they would be a good resource for helping with the shelter, for helping to evacuate animals, for all of those kind of things as well. Yeah.
And Peter says that all the dog daycares are full, which makes sense because everybody wants their dogs not to be lonely during the day. But they have lots of animal loving employees that would be ready to volunteer. And I think that's a really important takeaway here, is that that caring, that expertise will help us to create a good plan. And then identifying people in advance that want to help, then they can be officially, like the large animal rescue, they can be officially volunteer disaster service workers and have that, you know, that level of trust so that local government can use them to staff shelters, which then takes that burden off local government to take their city or county staff to staff the animal shelter when they could be doing something that's more in their area of expertise. I think we could also add here that, you know, the independent dog walker, they're all lovers of animals. And if they're out of a job during the disaster because nobody is going anywhere, they might absolutely be willing to love on some animals that need assistance. So I'll add them to the list too.
Us here, we can bring some of those to the planning table with us, and we can find out what, you know, maybe the doggy daycare is full. What's considered full for a doggy daycare that has to take care of an animal for 8 to 10 hours of a day, versus how many more animals could they put in there if we were in a disaster and we had to have crates brought in, and we just had to keep dogs alive during a disaster. They're, you know, even though they may be full during the day for doggy daycare, they may have additional capacity. You know, they may have an extra room, or they may have space out back where they walk the dogs, or they allow the dogs to exercise, that we might be able to use. So those are all great ideas. And like I said, you know, you've just confirmed for me what I already knew, which is you're the experts, you're the ones that know these kind of things and that can help us think these things through. You know, we have people in general are altruistic when it comes to disasters. We all have the desire to help. And I remember when Loma Prieta hit, one of the things that I watched happen, and every disaster that we've had since then, which kind of is where I got started, it isn't just helping the people that need the help, the people that do the helping also get helped emotionally and mentally, and being able to have something to do when the ground is shaking and you're nervous and you're worried, besides sitting around wringing your hands and worrying, maybe going to a place where you can be of service, where you can help, will help you as an individual as well. When Loma Prieta happened, the first thing I did after the major earthquake, during when the aftershocks were still happening, they were starting to gather volunteer groups, and I took my kids and we went to a place and we started packaging boxes of food that the food bank brought into manageable size boxes that were then being flown by private airplane pilots on their private planes to Watsonville, to the people whose homes had been destroyed and didn't even have their next meal. So those kind of opportunities, I'll call them, to be of service and to help others, as well as those.
I think you're glitching again. She's not usually like that. I don't know what's going on with her today.
Sorry. I'm going to move to the next slide. If you can't hear me, Marcia, can you talk a little bit about preparedness?
You're back, Cindy.
Yep, you're back. But
Oh, I am.
For a second, rest your poor sick voice.
Oh, that's okay. If I have a couple of things that I wanted to say as it pertains to preparedness measures, and then I'll give you back the microphone. But
Okay.
we have created the forms that I was talking about. And in fact, I'd like to, and I will push them to our website. I'd like to refer you all to the Cadre's website. Under preparedness, there will be, if there isn't already, a section for animals in disasters. And if you look in there, you'll find that there are some forms available for you to use for your own animals, as well as to give to your clients to use for their animals. It's one of them is a small animal ID form that that has a place where you can take a picture of yourself with your animal and attach it to that form. And then you can put that whole thing into a plastic envelope or something and put that directly into your emergency preparedness kit or to your animal emergency preparedness kit. So that when you show up at a shelter with your animal, you have your form already filled out. They already know that your animal's been vaccinated, and you've got the vaccination information. You've got the vet information. You can hand your animal off to that shelter, to that temporary shelter, with the confidence and knowing that they will stand the best chance of reunifying you with that animal, because you've done all the preparedness work to make that possible. So we will provide you those forms that you can use for yourselves or for your clients. We also have a form for large animals, as Dusty and William know. If you happen to have large animals, or you have family or friends that have large animals, giving those forms to them as well is a great idea. Having your own personal go kit is that includes having a portable crate or a lightweight enough crate that you can just pick it up and go with it, is also another opportunity. Making sure that you've stored water, and of course having that buddy plan. We'll make those forms available to you, and certainly along the way we'll do more in that arena. Marcia, did you have more you wanted to share with us?
I think that's it. It is very helpful, and I think part of the takeaways for us is we're wrapping up here is that we'll having more ambassadors for emergency preparedness is important. And so if we can get the folks that are speaking directly to the pet owners, that will help. We have a real simple earthquake emergency supply kit for pets with things that you can buy at the dollar store, which is like, let's just start there. And then once you feel you've gotten over that initial, the disaster's never going to happen here, I don't have to really prepare. Once you take that step and go, okay, there are things I can do to prepare, then we're hoping that that list will nudge people to do more. It's and it's translated into 18 languages. I put the link in, it's our earthquake page. We got a grant last year to build out this earthquake page, and under each language, there is this Dollar Tree supply kit. So it's not complete. And I know that now we've got people in the room that we can make a better kit, or maybe we have a phase 1 kit and a phase 2 kit. There's nothing about birds on it, Sarah, so we need to fix that. And I'll stop talking so Cindy can wrap up here.
There is also free FEMA online training. If you go to this website, FEMA or training.fema.gov, and look for IS-10 or an animals online training, you'll see that that's available. William says for horses, use the Santa Clara County Large Animal Evacuation Team's Animal ID, which is one of the forms that I am going to put it on the website as well. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. The trainings are written by emergency managers, so it has a lot more about emergencies, and it is not as cohesive, in my personal opinion, about animals. Encourage you to take a look at those trainings as well. And then, I always want to make sure that being, connected to the emergency notification systems in our county, the county's emergency notification system is called Alert SCC. It already has, if you have a landline, it already has your number for your landline, but it has no way of connecting to you on your cell phone. It's you have to manually go into the system and sign up for Alert SCC if you want to get notifications about disasters as they come up. You certainly can do that by going to alertscc.org. You can put in your home location, and say your kids go to school on the other side of the county. You can put the address of the school as well, so that you can be notified if something happens in either of those areas. Or if your grandparents live in Morgan Hill and you live in Sunnyvale, you can get notified for Morgan Hill notices as well. You can sign up for emergency alert notices throughout the county by going to Alert SCC. And then just really quickly, let's talk a little bit about some of our next steps. And Marcia, will you push the
follow-up? Okay, so this just is, would you be willing to participate in follow-up conversations, which may be species specific? So we might just have horse people on the phone or bird people on the phone, because we do want to get into the details, and it's hard to do that when we're talking about everyone. Oops, and everybody said yes. Woohoo. Okay. Share those results. That's awesome. I knew we were missing an opportunity. And I'm talking to you all.
A few years ago, when I was working for county, I was told in the emergency operations center one day, Cindy, you have planned better for the animals than you have for the people. And my response was, well, that's because I like the animals better than the people. So there you go. We do have a quick survey that will come up when you finish this this presentation. When you get out of the Zoom, there'll be a really quick survey that comes up at just asking a couple of follow-up questions. This is how we get funded, and being able to say that we had you all on this call and that we that you had opinions and such is what will help us keep this thing moving forward. So I just would appreciate, we'll leave the Zoom open for you to be able to do that. At this point, I would just say, ask you if you had any questions. I would encourage you to take a look at the Cadre website, potentially consider being a part of the network so that you can get in the loop, if you will. And oh, I'm seeing Sarah says we're currently caring for 450 plus.
Yeah. Gosh,
Wow. Holy cow.
that's important. That's really important to know that.
Sarah, I think we're going to have to create a bird division of this planning process, like we have a large animal one. Peter says I have another meeting, so I'm going to have to leave at 11:30. Appreciate that. Any questions?
And any other organizations that you work with that were not part of this discussion, we're going to just keep reaching out until we get everyone, because we do want, at the very least, we want you to all be in that communication network so that you know what's happening and can make good decisions for the animals that are in your care. And then you'll be connected back to us. If there are things you need, we can let government know. Or if we get really good and we create an awesome animal care group, we'll just help each other.
I neglected to put those two pieces of contact information on my final slide of our presentation, but you can get in touch with either of us. I am Cindy Stewart and Marcia Hovey. I'm at cindy@cadresv.org and Marcia is at cadresv.org. SV stands for Silicon Valley, by the way. So certainly reach out to us. If you think of anything, oh, you won't call us at 3 o'clock in the morning, but you can certainly email us at 3 o'clock in the morning. If that's when you think of the other thing, we'll be in touch and we'll be creating some kind of follow-up sessions and coordination, and hopefully we'll get this up and running again, so that we can serve the animals and the residents of those animals in Santa Clara County going forward. Thank you all for your time, and I really appreciate you. At this point, I think we're finished, unless you've got questions.
Thanks, everyone.